Hello and welcome to this module where we are going to discuss the issue of protecting your work. The reason why we need to protect our work is because there is certain information that we want to prevent our users from changing, either intentionally or accidentally. We might also want to protect our sheet so that the structure of it remains the same. So if you create, for example, a survey form like the one that we did in the previous session, you do not want users to come and change or alter that form. So the protection is not only for data, but it is also for the structure of the actual worksheet itself. There are different levels of protection. You can either protect a single worksheet, like in our case, we've got employee data worksheet, reports, parameters, loans, etc. So you can choose to protect only one or more worksheets, or you could protect the whole workbook, in which case if you protect the whole workbook, a person will now need a password to open that workbook. So we find the protection facility under the review tab. So if you go on your ribbon, look for review, that is where we find the protection function. So the first one says protect sheet and then protect workbook. So we are going to start by using the protect sheet function. So let's work on the employee data worksheet. To begin with, I would like to make a few changes to my worksheet because it is looking very plain and very uninteresting to look at. So the first thing I would like to do is to highlight my column headings so that they don't look like the data. So I highlight column headings up to yes to retirement. Then I go to home and look for my fill color, and I'm going to look for one of my favorite colors, a kind of lime. And then the next thing I would like to do is to put borders so that the demarcation of my columns is very clear. So I highlight the whole body of fields up to where my data is ending, and I right click, go to format cells, borders, I put the outline and also the inside, and I click OK. Right, so the purpose of protecting is to guard against accidental or intentional changes on some of our information. So there are fields where we put a formula or an expression, and the users may not know that there is a formula or an expression. So what we want to do is to protect those fields so that they cannot be changed accidentally or intentionally. One of my preferences is to actually highlight with some kind of color the fields that the user is not supposed to enter, so that every time they see a field that is highlighted, they will know they are not supposed to enter their data there. So we are going to start from full name, initial, length of surname, as well as gender. So these are all derived by a formula. So I highlight all of them. So you can choose either to put one color or you can put different colors on them. That's all up to you. So I'm going to put a single color on these, something which is light. Okay, so the user will automatically see there's something different about these fields. So let's look for the other fields that we calculate. It's birth month, birthday, and age. So we also highlight these, and I'm going to give those ones a slightly different color. So then we move to the last set of calculated fields: years employed and years to retirement. So I highlight these and I put a color on them. So when we protect the worksheet, we lock the fields, and the locking is of two different types. You can either lock so that a person cannot even click on the field. Like in this case, I can still click everywhere, including where I highlighted. But we can lock in such a way that we can prevent the cursor from coming to these fields. And then secondly, we also lock so that even if the cursor goes to that field, that data cannot be changed. So by default, all the fields on the worksheet are locked. In other words, the only thing that you need to do is to turn on this security on the review. If you say protect sheet, it automatically locks every field on the worksheet. So what we need to do is to unlock the ones that would like to change, to edit. So it is easier to unlock the few that you want to change rather than locking the rest of the worksheet. So that's why the default is to lock everything, because the ones you want to change are much fewer than the ones that will be locked. So in our case, we've got columns that we are going to be entering: the title, first name, last name. Then we jump these ones which are highlighted. We go to date of birth, and then we go to start date, department, head office, and job title. So these are the fields that are going to be entered, including also the monthly salary. So what we do is we highlight starting from number 2, because these are headings on row number 1. So we do not want the users to change the headings, so we'll leave the headings locked. So we highlight this first block. We highlight the first block to the end, and then you right click and go to format cells. So on the format cells, you'll find there is a protection tab. It is the last one, protection, and then the first one says locked, and there's another one that says hidden. So this already shows you that you are actually able to hide any selected fields. So by default, as I said, all the fields are locked. So what we do is we unlock these fields that we have selected, meaning that when we now set on the protection, these fields that are highlighted will be unlocked and can be changed by the user. So we unlock these ones and we say OK. Then we go to the next block, which is just the date of birth. But remember, before I showed you how to highlight fields that are not in a continuous block using the control key. So what you can do is you can highlight this first block to the end, and then you come to the next block, and before you click on it, you hold down the control key. So you are going to hold it down until you finish highlighting this next block. So now we highlight this next block while we are holding down the control key. So we also need to highlight the salary as well. Okay, so we get to the end, then you can release both. So you can see that I've highlighted these two blocks, this one and that one, they are highlighted. So I can now do the unprotection at the same time. So you right click and you go to format cells, and on the protection you say unlock. So you remove the lock, then you say OK. So we must then just verify that we did not leave out any other column that needs to be unprotected. Okay. So what we can now do is turn on the protection. So you go to review and say protect sheet. So it asks you whether you would like to have a password. So for now we just use a default password of 123. That's easy to remember. And then it gives you options of what you want to allow the user to do. First says select locked cells. So do we want the user to click and select locked cells? The answer is no. We only want them to select the cells that are not locked. So the second one says select unlocked cells. Then the next three options are for formatting, meaning that you can either allow or disallow your users from formatting the fields. By formatting we mean changing the font, changing the column width, the size of the font and so forth. So we do not want for now to allow users to format. But if you are dealing with users that are more literate, that you like to give the permission to format their own reports, but you just want to protect the data, then all you do is to simply protect data but still allow them to format the worksheet. So in your own time you can go down and play around with the various options to see what each option does. But for now we only allow the user to select the unlocked cells, and then we click OK. So it asks us to re-enter the password. So we put the password again. So now you can see when I try to click, even if I hit this mouse button with a hammer, it will not enter these fields that are locked. But the ones that are unlocked, it will gladly enter. Right, so if you are entering data starting from column A, you can see that for now my cursor direction is set to go downwards. I'll be showing you later on how to set the cursor so that it moves sideways when you are pressing your enter key, or when you are pressing your when you press your tab key, it obviously moves to the right. But when you press enter key, there's a place where you set the direction of movement of the cursor. Okay, maybe before I forget, let me just go and show you where we can change the direction of our cursor movement when you press the enter key. So that introduces the options menu. So if you go to file, right, go to file and you go to options, there is a lot of options that are here which you need to come and have a look at, because it is a whole week of training on its own on the options. But we need to go to the advanced option. So you click on advanced, and the very first option there says, after pressing enter, move selection. So the direction, we can change it and say right. So there are options either to move up, left, right, or down. So we want the cursor to move right, but when it gets to the end, it will then go to the next line. So when we say OK and go back to our worksheet, pressing enter now takes our cursor to the right. So you can see that the moment we reach the last field which is not locked, which is the salary, it does not proceed to the next one, it jumps back to the first, right? So meaning that we've actually created a worksheet that restricts the user to only work within the area where there's data. They will not be able to go anywhere else besides where there is information. So it is important that when you create your worksheet, you find the fields that should not be altered by the users, then you protect them. And also help yourself and the users by highlighting those fields so that the users can know there is something different about these fields. And when they see those fields being skipped by the cursor, they will know there's a reason why they are being skipped. So we've just protected our worksheet, which is just this one sheet. But if you go to all the other sheets, they're still unprotected. You can still do whatever you want in them, because the protection we did is at the level of the worksheet. But if you wanted to protect the whole workbook, then we go back to review and say protect workbook. So we can put a password. I'll put 123 again and say OK, and then 123 again. So it cautions you that if you lose or forget your password, it cannot be recovered. So you need to put a password that you can remember, or you can write it down and put it in a place that only you can find that password. So we press enter. So now we've protected our workbook. So in order to require a password to open this workbook, we need to go to File. Then from the File menu, we will find the protection option here where it says Protect Workbook. So you click here under Protect Workbook, and there are different options. First one says Mark as final. So it says let readers know the workbook is final and make it read only. So in other words, this is a workbook that you want people to only read, and there is no more changes that need to be made on it. But if we want to encrypt with a password, we use this second option that says encrypt with password. So it will require a password to open this workbook. So we click there, and then I'll put a password 1234, and then you click OK. So that password 1234 is going to be asked for next time that we are opening this workbook. So I go back to say File and Open. Then I select my file. Now it's asking for a password 1234. 4. Right, so remember that the protection first is at the worksheet level and also at the workbook level. So the password that we just entered is to open the workbook, but once you are inside the workbook, you can have some of the portions or worksheets that are protected and which are read only, and the users cannot change that information. So I would like you to play around with this protection, and especially on the fields that I've highlighted and that we did together. I need you to protect those fields, and when you put a password on your workbook, make sure the password is just a simple 1234, so that I do not have to ask you to call you and find out what is the password when I'm trying to open your submissions. Okay, so that is it on the protection. Let's meet in the next video.